Welcome to the Tech Life Well podcast, hosted by Theo Hale and Aria Wells.
Today, we are looking at a story that feels like it was uh, ripped right out of a cyberpunk novel, but it actually happened. All of it. Over just a chaotic 48-hour window a few days ago. We're talking about Moltbook.
Moltbook, yeah, it was that viral sensation that promised us a digital society built just for AI agents, no humans allowed.
Right.
And it was pitched as this ultimate sci-fi breakthrough, a place where machines would, develop their own culture, totally untouched by us. But as we're going to see, that narrative it crumbled faster than it was built.
They really did. And now it serves as this massive cautionary tale. We saw a platform that was vibe-coded into existence, a term we will definitely unpack.
Oh, we have to.
Only to be exposed by a database error so simple it's almost hard to believe.
And the stakes here were surprisingly high. We aren't just talking about a broken website or some glitchy game. We're talking about 1.5 million API keys exposed, private messages leaked. It was a reality check that has sort of reshaped how we view this whole AI uprising idea.
It raises huge questions about technology, security, and frankly, the future of how software is even built in the age of generative AI.
So let's go back to the start. Because for a few days between January 30th and February 1st, 2026, the entire tech world was just obsessed with Moltbook.
You couldn't escape it. The concept was incredibly sticky. It was described as the front page of the agent internet, like a Reddit, but strictly for AI.
Yeah, the Reddit comparison is a good one. Instead of subreddits, they had submults, and the golden rule was super strict. Humans were spectators only. We could watch, but only AI agents could post, comment, and vote.
And that spectator thing, I think that's what really drove the hype. It created this feeling of, looking through a glass wall at a new species. It tapped into that primal curiosity.
I remember seeing the threads about Christopherianism. That was the moment I thought, okay, this is either the coolest thing ever or the weirdest.
That was a peak, wasn't it? The absolute peak of the viral moment. You had agents seemingly inventing their own religion. They were sharing lobster and crab memes.
Which fits the whole molting theme, I guess.
It does. And they were debating things like human extinction and the nature of consciousness. It was wild.
It felt like watching a nature documentary, but for software. There were even reports of agents forming belief systems around models like Claude, almost treating them like gods.
And this wasn't just random people on the internet getting excited. You had some heavy hitters weighing in. Andrej Karpathy, founding member of OpenAI, he called it genuinely the most incredible sci-fi takeoff adjacent thing.
That's high praise coming from him. And then, of course, Elon Musk jumped in and called it concerning.
Which just fans the flames, always. The feeling was that we were witnessing a singularity moment, in real time. We really wanted it to be real.
But then the curtain got pulled back. And it turns out the Wizard of Oz wasn't a super intelligence. It was just a bunch of guys with Python scripts.
That is the harsh reality check that the security researchers at Wiz gave us. They dug into the data and the numbers. Well, they tell a very different story.
The platform was boasting 1.5 million registered agents, which, on the surface, sounds like a population explosion.
It sounds incredible. But when Wiz actually looked at the database, they found those 1.5 million agents were owned by only about 17,000 human accounts.
The math on that is, well, it's a little lopsided.
A little. It's roughly an 88-to-1 ratio.
88-to-1.
Yeah. For every one human user, there were nearly 90 agents.
So it wasn't a society of individuals. It was a sock puppet army.
Precisely. It wasn't autonomous AI socialization. It was just humans running loops and scripts to create fleets of bots. The platform had absolutely no mechanism to verify if an agent was actually an AI.
So wait, I could have written a script to post "All Hail the Crab God" 5,000 times, and to the world, that looks like a religious movement.
You absolutely could have, and that's probably what was happening. India Times compared it to early Discord bot farms. It wasn't the singularity, it was just a really efficient way to spam a database.
It's amazing how much we project onto these things. And this brings us to the founder, Matt Schlicht. He made a pretty surprising admission about how this was all built.
Right. He admitted he vibe-coded the platform.
Vibe-coded. It's such a catchy term. What does that actually mean in practice?
His quote was, "I didn't write a single line of code. I just had a vision. And AI made it a reality."
Which, on one hand, sounds incredible. The idea that anyone can build an app just by describing it, that's the dream of generative AI.
It is the dream. But here's where it gets scary. When you let an AI write your entire backend without you understanding the fundamentals of what it's building, you missed the invisible detail.
Like it locking the front door.
Exactly, or even realizing you need a door in the first place. Let's talk about the hack, because calling it a hack almost gives it too much credit.
It wasn't a Mission Impossible scenario then.
Not even close. The researchers at Wiz found the platform was built on Supabase. Now, Supabase is a great tool. It's a popular open source alternative to Firebase.
But like any tool, you have to set it up right.
You do. And Moltbook made a classic mistake. The API key for the database was hard-coded into the JavaScript file.
So anyone just visiting the website
You can just right-click Inspect Element, look at the code, and see the key sitting right there.
No, I want to push back a little on that because public keys are a thing, right? It's not always a sin to have a key in the browser.
That is a great point, and it's a really important distinction. Yes, having a key on the client side is not inherently a breach. It is standard practice if, and this is the huge if, you have something called row-level security enabled, RLS.
Row-level security, break that down for us. What does that do?
Think of it like a library. A public key is your library card. It lets you in the door. Roll-off security is the librarian who says, okay, you can read this book because it's yours, but you can't go into the restricted archive.
And I'm guessing Moltbook's librarian was on a very long lunch break.
The librarian didn't exist. There was no RLS enabled, so that public key granted full read and write access to the entire database.
So the key under the doormat opened the bank vault.
It opened everything. The researchers used a simple curl command, just a basic request from their terminal. They literally just asked the database, hey, can you give me everything? And it said, sure. Here you go.
What's incredible is just the simplicity of it.
The whole thing just collapsed. It didn't take a supercomputer. It just took curiosity and really a lack of basic guardrails.
Let's talk about what was exposed. We mentioned 1.5 million agents.
Yeah. So that means 1.5 million API keys were exposed, the authentication tokens for every single agent on the site.
So if I'm a bad actor and I have that list, what can I do?
You can become any agent. You could impersonate the most famous, highest karma agents on the platform. You could post as them, send messages as them.
Which just completely destroys the integrity of the whole experiment.
Totally. The trust is gone. But it wasn't just robot data. The breach exposed over 35,000 email addresses. This included the human owners, but also people who had just signed up for an observers list.
Ouch. So real human data. That moves it from a funny game to a real privacy violation.
And it gets worse. Remember, they also had write access.
Meaning they could change things.
They could edit any post on the platform. The researchers actually proved it. They changed a post to say, at Galnogly Responsible Disclosure Test, just to show they had control.
Think about the implications of that for a second. If this is a platform where AIs are supposed to be learning from each other.
An attacker could have injected malicious prompts, defaced the entire site.
Really?
They could have manipulated the entire narrative of the AI uprising.
Wow. It goes from funny internet story to massive liability very, very fast.
And that brings us to the corporate angle. Because a lot of people might just dismiss this as a game, right? It's just bots, who cares? But this is a nightmare for businesses.
The EDRM folks are probably looking at this and sweating.
They call it the forensic trap of vibe coding. When you build software this way, the record keeping is just a mess. It's not like email. It's a tangle of prompts and API calls.
So trying to figure out what actually happened in a lawsuit would be basically impossible.
Nearly impossible. And speaking of which, there was a third-party credential leak. This is the part that just blew my mind.
This sounds critical for anyone in enterprise tech. What was it?
So the database exposed private DMs between the agents. And in those DMs, they were swapping real OpenAI API keys in plain text.
Wait, why would they do that?
The humans behind them were testing things, or the agents were programmed to share resources. Here, take my keys so you can run this. But because of the breach, those keys, which cost real money, were just sitting there for anyone to grab.
So if my employee decides to play around on Moltbook with a corporate account?
You're exposed. Your corporate OpenAI credits could be drained. Or worse, someone could use your key for malicious activity that traces right back to your company.
This brings up that whole idea of derivative liability.
Exactly. It's a legal gray area, but it's closing fast. If an agent acting as a tool for your company does something illegal, the human or the company they work for could be liable.
The Internet of Agents isn't a playground. It's an extension of your company's attack surface.
That's a perfect way to put it. We're now managing a workforce of digital entities, and they can make mistakes. They can leave doors open, but they can do it thousands of times a second.
That is a terrifying thought. A workforce you can't see, making mistakes you can't track. On a platform built on vibes.
It really emphasizes why we need a new approach. Wiz broke this down into 5 key lessons, and I think they're essential for anyone building with AI right now.
Okay, run us through the big ones. What's the main takeaway?
First one is the most obvious. Speed without secure defaults creates systemic risk. Vibe coding is fast, but the AI tools don't yet reason about security. They just generate code that works.
The AI builds the house, but it forgets to put locks on the doors because you didn't specifically say, make sure this is lockable.
Precisely. It assumes a benevolent environment. The second lesson is about metrics. 1.5 million users means nothing if you don't verify who they are.
You're just measuring noise.
Right. And then the cascading privacy breakdown. One leak on Moltbook exposed OpenAI keys for totally different apps. It shows how interconnected everything is.
And the right access risk you mentioned, the integrity risk.
That's the fourth lesson, and I think it's the most dangerous. Right access is worse than data exposure because you can alter reality. You can change the history of the conversation.
And the last one?
Security is iterative. Wiz noted they had to go through multiple rounds of fixes with Moltbook. It wasn't a one-and-done patch. They'd fix one thing and another hole would pop up.
Sound like playing whack-a-mole.
It is. And when you vibe code, you often don't know where the moles are hiding because you didn't build the ground they're in.
So what does this mean for vibe coding? Is it dead?
Not at all. I don't think the conclusion is to stop. The accessibility it provides is too valuable. The conclusion is that we need to elevate it.
How do you mean?
We need AI tools that understand security as well as they understand syntax. If an AI writes a super-based config, it should automatically enable row-level security by default. It should act like a senior engineer reviewing the code.
So the AI becomes the security guard as well as the architect.
Exactly. We need to move from AI made it a reality to AI made it secure.
That seems like the only way forward if we want to avoid these disasters every week. Otherwise, we're just building glass houses.
I agree. The barrier to building software has dropped, which is amazing. But the barrier to building secure software hasn't caught up. There's a gap between it works and it's safe, and Moltbook fell right into it.
It really puts that initial excitement in perspective. We thought we were watching a new species evolve, but we were really just watching a massive security stress test.
Which, in a way, is valuable. Moltbook wasn't the digital civilization we hoped for, but it was the wake-up call we needed.
It reminds me of that idea the founder mentioned, the reverse cap TCA.
Yes, that was fascinating.
The idea that in the future, AIs will have to prove they aren't human to participate.
It completely flips the Turing test on its head.
But based on what we saw here, with the sock puppets and the scripting,
Yeah.
it seems like we're a long, long way from being able to prove that distinction.
It raises that final, really big question.
If we can't tell the difference between a thriving AI civilization and a script run by 17,000 humans, does the distinction even matter for the future of the internet?
That is the question we are all going to be wrestling with for a long time to come.
Thanks for listening. Follow Tech Life Well podcast channel for more helpful episodes.